Welcome to PlanStrongerTV. I'm your host, David Holland. On today's episode, I am joined by CFP professional Michelle Buonincontri to discuss financial do's and don'ts in a divorce. Our panel of psychologists will discuss why couples have conflict about money and what to do about it. And I will share 3 retirement mistakes you don't have to make. It's time to plan stronger.
PlanStrongerTV is made possible in part by the following.
Helping you create a better retirement through home equity. The Stephen J. Sless Group of PRMI, National Reverse Mortgage Leaders. Expect more with Sless. The Rice Law Firm is dedicated to providing prompt, high-quality, and fairly priced service in the areas of wills, trusts, probate, and estate planning. We also assist individuals with divorce, family law, and prenuptial agreements. The Rice Law Firm is the name you can trust.
Not adjusting your insurances over time can be a big mistake in retirement. Why? Well, look, resources are finite, right? So we need to put our money where it's most likely to be needed, and that certainly applies to insurance. So for example, if we had disability insurance while we're working, but now we're retiring, well, we might need to trade what we were paying for disability insurance, instead get long-term care insurance. Just as an example. So we need to look at the risks that we face at each stage of life and then adjust the insurances appropriately so that we're addressing those risks the best we can, because we can't, most people, can't have it all, right? We've got to allocate resources. We have to make choices. Here's a reality check. And this is from my own experience. Nobody's ever told me, you know, I regret buying that insurance. Doggone it, I wish I hadn't done that. I don't hear that. What I hear are the people that said, I coulda, I woulda, I shoulda. I shoulda bought the insurance and I didn't. Or I waited too late and then I wasn't able to qualify. And I use the long-term care insurance as an example. As you get older and when health conditions present themselves, you may not be able to get long-term care insurance, and then that might be when you actually need it, right? So look at getting things as you age and as you meet different criteria. And then long-term care is just one example. Okay? Your takeaway is this. Consider your situation. Where are you? What are your options? What are your priorities? We need to balance things out. You know, we certainly don't want to be insurance poor. I don't want to put ourselves in a position of not having enough cash. We don't want to solve one problem really, really, really well and then not have the resources for other things. So it's all about mitigating risk or mitigating a threat that can affect you, but we don't necessarily need to go all in on addressing one thing. We have to make sure we've got a balance of the risks that we address. And now with that said, I do like to err on the side of more cash and a little more insurance just to be sure that we don't find ourselves in a pickle, okay? So watch out for being in a pickle and you'll plan stronger. It's time to talk about the psychology of money. Finances can cause conflict in a variety of relationships, and especially for couples. So, how can couples minimize their money problems? Joining me for a panel discussion on this topic are Dr. Art Markman, Professor of Psychology at the University of Texas at Austin and the Executive Director of the IC² Institute, Dr. Christy Archuleta, Associate Professor at the University of Georgia and the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Financial Therapy, and Dr. Brad Glontz, a Certified Financial Planner Practitioner and in Boulder, Colorado, and a professor of financial psychology at Creighton University. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Okay, so money and couples, I know we could probably talk for about 6 hours on this, but we won't. What are the big issues for couples and money? Where do they need to start?
Yeah, so one of the things I was just going to preface this whole conversation with is that money is one of the top things that couples have arguments about. And not only is it one of the top things that they argue about, it's one of the most intensely fought about issues. And part of that is because it's such an emotionally charged issue.
Why? That's my question. Why?
Well, money is at the root of everything we're trying to accomplish in our lives. That is, being able to afford the home of your dreams, being able to raise a family, saving for the future. So it's at the root of that, and there are so many different ways that we can go astray in the way that we use our money. We can spend too much on one thing rather than another. We can not save. Plus, with couples in particular, they come from very different backgrounds, which means that they have very different expectations. And often, because we're uncomfortable talking about money, we don't actually have the explicit conversations that we need to have in order to really set appropriate expectations about how the future is going to go.
Ooh, it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So couples come to the relationship with totally different money scripts in the research that we've done. Beliefs around money, like what it means, how we're supposed to use it. And so when I'm working with couples in conflict around money, there's always some issue that's they're bringing them in. It's what are we spending on our kids or retirement or whatever the issue is. And the conversation I encourage them to have is the one that they should have had maybe on the third date, second date, I don't know, which is like, real like, what was it like for you growing up around money? What was it like for your parents? What are your biggest financial fears? What are your financial goals? And really understanding your partner, because people don't talk about money. People have very little insight into their own relationship with money to begin with. And to really have that opportunity, it helps people really understand their own relationship with money just by talking about it. And then when you understand that your partner is, for example, coming from poverty and is really afraid of being broke, and in your mind, coming from middle class, you might be like, well, that might not even cross your mind. But knowing that they have this deep-seated fear around money really puts these behaviors in perspective, and it can make you feel some compassion, and it can help you move towards negotiating a solution, which is the ultimate goal. Ultimately, you need to get a solution that you both feel good about to move forward.
Some sort of reconciliation on how you're going to handle money in the relationship as a couple.
Yeah, and one of the places where this plays out has to do with risk. So there's a lot of work by Elke Weber and her colleagues on the different types of risks that people are willing to tolerate in their lives. And what's interesting is it's really domain specific. And so someone might be a social risk taker. They might be the first one up to give a talk in front of a group. Or they might be a physical risk taker. They might go bungee jumping or hurtling down a mountain on a mountain bike. But that doesn't predict what their financial risk-taking ability is going to be. And often you don't see that willingness to take financial risks until you're very close to somebody. And so you may discover that your partner has a very different financial risk profile than you do, and discover that very late in the game when your finances are already commingled.
Yeah, and all of this plays into how do my partner and I interact together around money. And how we interact and how we manage money has a significant impact on our relationship quality and our financial satisfaction. And so it's very rarely necessary. Sometimes we hear, hey, I can't communicate with my partner or my spouse about money. Well, learning what their story is and understanding what their story is the first step. And that helps to create this bridge of trust and this vulnerability piece where people are really willing to share and talk about, all right, now that we understand each other, we can start interacting differently when we talk about money, which hopefully reduces that conflict.
Another problem is that money is fundamentally about transactions. And the reason that that's problematic is because there are often inequities in a relationship in the amount of money that one partner or another is making. And so if one partner has a job that pays more than the other, but the finances are going to be mingled in some way, then that doesn't mean that there necessarily has to be a transaction that enables the partner who makes less money to get access to more of that money. And so you have this very strange situation in which this thing that is designed for transactions inside the couple doesn't necessarily need to signal that there's a transaction taking place.
Absolutely, and that unbalanced situation that often occurs can be a source of conflict and people feeling guilty, perhaps, that they're not contributing enough, et cetera. And you'll hear all sorts of things out there around how people are supposed to do money and accounts, and you're supposed to have them separate, supposed to have them together. You know, in our experience, it really doesn't matter. Like those details don't matter. What matters is that people feel like they're being heard, they're being understood. What's important to them is being valued. And then in terms of how you actually structure it is actually less important.
What we do know is that when couples know about what is happening with one another, that really is important. So some couples may say, yes, pooling is really important so that we know what's happening with one another. Others, that might not work at all, but having an idea what the other person is doing with their money is very, very key. That transparency is really key.
And one of the benefits to being in a relationship around money is you tend to have better financial health. And I think one of the reasons is you have somebody who sits there, like my wife would be, say, "You sure you really need that?" Yeah. You know, to try to make you think through it a little bit. And so you can balance each other out. So there's the opportunity.
Yeah, so money is not the movie theater. Silence is not golden.
Right.
I mean, that's because I mean, there's a natural, I guess, American culture. I come back to that many times in these kind of conversations that we just don't talk about it. And so if you're not talking about it, what are you doing? You're making assumptions, right? Mm-hmm. You're coming at it from a totally different place. No wonder we mess this up and we have so much confusion. So yeah, talking and here we are with 3 people that deal with psychology all the time. Listening, right?
Yeah, and part of that is putting yourself out there to be vulnerable, and that is really, really hard to do with money.
Excellent. Great insights. Art, Christy, Brad, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Inadequate long-term care planning can be a big mistake in retirement. Why? Well, simply put, the toll on the family can be substantial and disruptive to their lives. The cost also can be substantial, and care may be required for many years. So here's a reality check, okay, and it's really a question. If you knew that there was a 70% chance of being in a car accident, would you have good insurance? Well, of course, yes. So here's some facts to keep in mind as you think about long-term care planning. 70% of those 65 or older will need some form of care during their lifetime. 3 years is the average duration of care. Now, a couple things to remember or point out. Medicare has limited benefits for true long-term care. And Medicaid is for people who don't have a lot of money. So what's your takeaway? Well, what are your options? What's realistic for you? Are you insurable? Do you have resources? The answer to these questions will have a big impact on the route you take and how you choose to address long-term care. What I'm asking you to do is to make an active decision about it, not just say, well, I don't really want to think about that, okay? So the other takeaway point I have for you is this. You don't have to do this on your own. You can consult a financial planner. You can consult an insurance agent. You can consult an attorney. But at the end of the day, after those consultations and talking to people that are professionals who can guide you on what makes sense for you, ultimately, you decide what is best for you, okay? So, and I will point one more thing out on this. I have met with people who ask me about the need for long-term care for them and the way to address it through insurance or some sort of allocation of money specifically for that purpose. And I can tell you that there have been plenty of times where I told the person, don't get insurance, you don't have enough assets, or your situation is such where it doesn't make sense. So consider these options and you will plan stronger. I'd like to welcome to the program Certified Financial Planner Practitioner, Michelle Buonincontri. As a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, Michelle specializes in divorce planning. Her company is aptly named Being Mindful in Divorce and is located in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you on. So you're focusing on divorce. This affects obviously a very large percentage of the population, and there's a lot of financial aspects to it, of course, when somebody goes through a divorce. I would like to ask you, what are some of the top mistakes, or maybe say a more positive thing, what are the things people really need to make sure they do in a divorce, some must-dos that they need to take care of?
Okay. I think the first one is really engaging in self-care. Nobody really knows the toll that a divorce really takes on you physically and emotionally. So the sooner you really can have a plan in place, whether it's a support team with friends and family, maybe you're doing yoga, meditation, journaling, those types of things, it could be really helpful. If you're not taking care of yourself, health concerns could arise. I think also planning is really important.
Yeah.
You want to know ahead of time what you don't know, so you want to gather those documents. You want to become educated around the property laws in your state. Are you an equitable distribution state? Are you a community property state? What separate versus marital property, where you live, impacts all those things.
Okay.
And I think kind of going back to the self-care, create a vision for your divorce. Who do you really need to be during the process, so you can kind of self-check on the decisions that you're making around your family.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot to keep in play and keep track of and live your life and go through this process.
Yeah. I think the last one is to really be open to working with your partner whenever possible. And many times in the process, you'll have an attorney or an advisor that would tell you, no, I'm handling everything. The communication is only through our offices. And I think that can really thwart the process, and it could create much more anxiety, time, and expense where there doesn't have to be that.
Okay. So how do you, there's a lot there to unpack, how do you balance between listening to advisors, be it your attorney or financial advisor or your certified divorce financial analyst, how do you balance that with having some of that communication with the soon-to-be ex-spouse?
Well, I think if there is domestic violence involved, it's kind of like all bets are off at that point.
That's different.
You know, I think having a self-check, if you have that vision that you can kind of say to yourself, am I acting in alignment with someone who wants to be kind and loving and support my family? I think also when you're working with a CDFA, for me, it's a lot about the data. So I think that when people see the data, it makes it much easier for them to make decisions, and it helps to take that emotion out of it. So that helps from that point of view. As far as the issue with the attorney, I think it's about your gut. Like, you have to trust it. So if this is someone that you can't talk to freely, or you feel that they're having you do something that's out of alignment with what's right for your family, you need to trust that and have a conversation. Maybe it's time to get a different attorney.
Okay. Because you're not married to them.
No, and it's your divorce.
Too.
Well, not for nothing. Were they there when you said I do?
Right.
Right. So as the advocate for your own divorce, you have to be the one to speak up, because it's not the judge, it's not the family court system, and it's not the attorney that really has your back. It really has to be you.
You've said it very well, Michelle. You laid out a couple different must-dos, but the one I hear really jump off the table here is you've got to listen to your own place of where things are and what's important.
And I think the self-care helps you do that.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been thinking of divorce for a while and you've been stressed. And sometimes there might be emotional abuse or financial abuse, or you might have just forgot who you were, right? Because you were taking care of your children, you were being the mom or the dad, you were the one that went to work every day. So you need to get back into touch with what's important to me. What are my values? And a lot of times people confuse positions with priorities. So, and there's a subtle difference. So if I want my children to feel loved and safe, that's different than my children must live in this house.
Right, right.
Right? So if I can identify the priorities of loving and safe, then I'm going to have more open conversations with my attorney, with my spouse, and things can go smoother.
Good, and don't put yourself at a disadvantage emotionally.
Yeah.
Or be impaired by your emotions.
Yeah. And it's it. A lot of people get wrapped up in that, even just keeping the house. They have to have the house. They think it's a security blanket. But maybe you can't afford the house. And if you need to move now 2 or 3 years later, I think that's a little bit more devastating to the children versus the sale of the house and moving to a new place kind of coincides with that next phase of our life.
Exactly, exactly. Well put. So give us a success story when people actually do these must-dos and get them right and listen to you and to their advisors to look on this path and be very careful about what they're doing.
I worked with a couple, and I have to say they were almost like the poster children for divorce, if there was such a thing, for amicable divorce. They had been married close to 30 years, and they were both willing to take responsibility for where in their marriage there was this creation of a situation that created a deviation. And they were willing to look to the future rather than being stuck in the past and regret and blaming. They had all their documents in order. They were open to working with other professionals. So we brought in an appraiser. There was a valuation of some annuities that they owned to make sure that it made sense to even keep those. And for one spouse, it didn't make sense. And just that keeping that communication open. And in the whole process, which I was totally, I didn't expect, which I thought was awesome, the husband was willing to equalize their incomes for 10 years.
Wow.
Because there was a pretty big disparity there. And although they didn't have younger children, he was willing to do that. It made her feel safer. And they actually decided to continue as business partners after the fact because they had a business where they bought and sold properties together. And they felt they could still continue the relationship afterwards.
I think you can call that amicable.
Yeah,
wow.
It was awesome.
Okay, just one thing I want to make sure we get to is give us one of the biggest, we'll do one, biggest mistake or a must-don't in divorce.
I would say unrealistic expectations. Many people just think they're going to get what they're not going to get. So they don't know the law, and they're trying to say this is fair versus the law. But part of that process, too, is I find sometimes people fixate on short-term results rather than the long-term picture, and then they don't get appraisals, and they don't get the valuations, and then they don't really get the settlement that they needed to get.
They just want to get out.
Yes.
And give me what I can get and move on. I need to take care of myself. I need out of this. I need to be done. Get what I can get and move on without thinking through all those. In other words, not willing to stay in the process longer to get really what needs to be their outcome.
And sometimes the self-care is a big part in that. They're feeling worn down, and and if they're not amicable, the other person is using time on their side, and it's usually the less moneyed spouse that's getting worn down and just wants to get out.
That's pretty common.
I think so.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So go into it, eyes open, be patient. I guess patience is probably one of the biggest parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Michelle Buonincontri, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No plan for pre-Medicare health insurance can be a big retirement mistake. Why? Well, because you have to have health insurance, right? And if you retire before 65, Medicare is not going to be available. So you have to make sure you can get it. And here's the trick. Health insurance before you retire, but as you're getting older and closer to retirement, can be very expensive. So what's the reality check? Well, health insurance can be the biggest impediment to a successful and early retirement. And I'm speaking from a financial planner's perspective because we look at the cost of health insurance when somebody wants to retire early meaning before age 65. So it's got to be factored into the plan. Now, you've got options here. Let's go through them. Number one, maybe with your employment, you can work part-time and still have health insurance and benefits, even if maybe you've got to pay some or all of the coverage, because group health insurance tends to cost less than buying private insurance. What else? COBRA. If you're close enough to retirement and age 65, you can elect COBRA and again, stay on your employer's plan, and you may have to pay all of the health insurance premium, but it'll still very likely be less than buying it on the open market. And, of course, I mentioned the private insurance. If you are sure that you want to retire early, the key is to look into and price what will it cost for your own private insurance to cover the gap from when you retire until you get to age 65. Now, be forewarned, it's expensive. It can cost double, for example, what you're paying now if you are still working and you're covered under a group health plan. The key is to think about your options. And of course, the last one I have to throw in is maybe you find a way to work to 65. Now, if you say, well, look, there's no way. I'm retiring early. I can't work there another day. Well, then we've got to consider other options. The key, the takeaway for you is you retire when you want on your terms. Just make sure that you factor the health insurance into the equation if you're retiring before 65. And if you do that, you can plan stronger. We've covered a lot on today's program. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the information and the guests informative. and I hope this helps you to plan stronger. Oh, and one more thing. If you've enjoyed this program, call your local station and let them know. That will help me to plan stronger.
If you would like more information about the topics and our guests featured in this series, please visit our website at PlanStrongerTV.com. Also, if you have a question you would like David to answer, please send it to questions@PlanStrongerTV.com.
PlanStronger TV is made possible in part by the following.
Helping you create a better retirement through home equity. The Stephen J. Sless Group of PRMI, National Reverse Mortgage Leaders. Expect more with Sless. The Rice Law Firm is dedicated to providing prompt, high-quality, and fairly priced service in the areas of wills, trusts, probate, and estate planning. We also assist individuals with divorce, family law, and prenuptial agreements. The Rice Law Firm is the name you can trust. To order the free Plan Stronger newsletter and get the latest updates on the show, go to www.planstrongertv.com/subscribe.